under the blinding lights of Math Quest Live. A poor black boy in a worn-out hoodie steps onto a national television stage, facing dozens of cameras and the scrutinizing gaze of an elite audience. Suddenly, a powerful female judge approaches and delivers a cutting remark to the boy right into the microphone. When the round begins, the boy grows strangely calm, and just minutes later he leaves the entire studio in stunned silence as for the first time. It is the one who wrote the question who is forced to defend it. Before we go back, let us know where you're watching from and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. The studio lights hit Jaden like a physical force. 5 layers of stage lighting, 10 camera lenses pointed at his face. The Math Quest Live theme music thundered through speakers that probably cost more than his entire apartment building. Jaden Hayes stood on that polished stage in his gray hoodie and worn Jordan sneakers, feeling like he'd walked onto another planet. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. He shoved them into his pockets, felt the frayed fabric against his knuckles. 12 years old, and he'd never been anywhere like this. The studio audience stretched back into darkness, hundreds of faces he couldn't quite see. The cameras had little red lights that blinked at him like predatory eyes. Ladies and gentlemen, Sarah Chen, the host, gestured toward him with practiced enthusiasm. Please welcome our youngest contestant this season, Jaden Hayes from Southside Chicago. The applause felt thin, polite. The kind of sound people make when they're not sure what they're looking at. Jaden tried to smile. His lips felt numb. That's when he heard it, the sharp click-click-click of expensive heels on the stage floor, each step precise, deliberate like a metronome counting down to something terrible. The sound cut through the applause, through the music, straight into Jaden's chest. Brenda Whitmore Kent descended from the judge's platform. She wore a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than his grandmother's medical bills for a month. Diamond rings caught the stage lights as she moved. Her blonde hair was pulled back so tight it looked painful. Everything about her screamed control, perfection, untouchable authority. Jaden's instinct was to step back, but his feet wouldn't move. Brenda stopped in front of him, didn't extend her hand, didn't smile, just looked at him the way someone might examine a stain on expensive furniture. Then she reached out. Jaden thought she was finally going to shake his hand. Instead, her fingers cold and weighted with those diamond rings pinched the drawstring of his hoodie. She adjusted it, straightened it. The gesture was small, almost invisible to the cameras, but Jaden felt it like a slap. She was touching him the way you'd brush dirt off something. "There," Brenda said softly. Her voice had that crisp British accent that made everything sound like a judgment. "We can't have you looking too casual, can we?" Jaden's face burned. He wanted to say something, anything, but his throat had closed up. Brenda leaned closer. She was tall, much taller than him, and she used that height. Her mouth came close to his ear, and even though she was whispering, the microphone clipped to her lapel caught every word. "No Google to help you today, boy." Her breath was cold against his ear. "Here we use our brains, not YouTube algorithms." The words hit him like ice water. Jaden felt his stomach drop. Around them, the audience was still clapping, still smiling, completely unaware of what was happening in this small, terrible bubble of space. Brenda straightened up, turned to the nearest camera with a smile that looked warm and welcoming if you didn't know what she just said. Professional, practiced, perfect. "This young man," she announced, her voice carrying across the studio with practice projection, "represents the public school system of South Chicago, schools that are unfortunately facing significant challenges in terms of resources and educational standards." She paused. Let that sink in. Jaden is what we might call a statistical anomaly, an outlier in a system that frankly isn't designed to produce mathematical excellence. Another pause. That smile never wavered. It will be fascinating to see if his unconventional education has prepared him for the rigors of actual mathematical reasoning. The words were careful, calculated. To anyone not paying attention, it sounded like encouragement, like she was rooting for the underdog. Jaden heard what she really meant. "You don't belong here. You got lucky. This isn't your world." He looked down at his hands, pulled them from his pockets. His fingers still had chalk dust embedded in the creases, white powder that wouldn't wash out no matter how many times he scrubbed. The permanent mark of writing equations on his bedroom window, on foggy glass, on whatever surface he could find because notebooks cost money they didn't have. His hands were smaller than hers, darker, rougher. The nails were chewed down from stress. "I just wanted," Jaden started. "Your position is over there." Brenda cut him off smoothly, gesturing to a spot on the stage like she was directing a servant. "Next to the other contestants. We'll begin shortly." She turned away before he could respond. Click, click, click. Those heels carried her back to the judges' platform. Jaden stood there for a moment that felt like an hour. The cameras were still on him. He could feel them hungry for a reaction. The audience was watching, waiting to see what the poor kid from Southside would do. Sarah Chen, the host, was already moving on. "Exciting start to tonight's competition. Now let's meet our other contestants." Jaden walked to his position. Each step felt heavy, like walking through water. He passed Logan Sterling, 17 years old, standing there in a tailored suit that fit perfectly. Logan was tall, confident, white, with the kind of ease that came from never having to prove you belonged anywhere. Their eyes met for a second. Logan's expression was neutral, not hostile, not friendly, just there. Jaden took his spot, stood behind his podium. The surface was pristine, expensive. There was a tablet computer embedded in it, a microphone, a cup holder. Everything top of the line. Everything foreign. He looked up at the audience, searching. There, Section K, row 18, seat 7. He'd memorized it. His grandmother, Maxine Hayes, sat hunched in that seat. Even from here, even with the stage lights half blinding him, Jaden could see her trying to hold back a cough, her hand pressed against her chest. The chemo had made her so thin, made her so tired. But she was here. She'd insisted on coming, even though the trip from Southside to this studio in downtown Chicago had taken 3 buses and probably cost her more energy than she had to spare. Their eyes met across the distance. Grandma Max raised her hand, slowly, with visible effort. Her thumb went up. That simple gesture, that tiny movement, and Jaden saw her hand trembling with the effort. Something shifted in his chest. The burning humiliation didn't go away, but something else rose up beside it. Something harder, colder. He nodded once. She nodded back. On the monitors scattered around the studio, Jaden could see the live social media feed that MathQuest Live was so proud of. Tweets and posts scrolling past in real time. The hashtag #MathQuestLive was trending, and already just minutes into the broadcast, something else was starting to appear. #Justice for Jaden. The number next to it was climbing. 50 tweets. 100. 500. Someone had clipped Brenda's adjustment of his hoodie. Posted it. The internet had seen something the studio audience missed. Jaden watched the number jump. 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 people were angry. He turned his attention back to the stage, to Brenda, who sat at the judges' table looking pleased with herself, to Sarah Chen, who was explaining the rules with bright enthusiasm, to Logan Sterling and the other contestants who all looked so comfortable, so prepared, so certain this was where they were meant to be. Jaden's fingers found the edge of his hoodie sleeve, rubbed the worn fabric. No Google, no YouTube, just his brain. Fine. He'd been solving math problems since he was 7 years old, writing equations in the condensation on bus windows while his mom worked double shifts. He'd taught himself calculus from library books with pages falling out. He'd memorized theorems while lying awake at night listening to his grandmother's labored breathing in the next room, calculating the probability of survival, the cost of treatment, the impossible mathematics of staying alive when you were poor. Brenda Whitmore Kent thought he was a statistical anomaly, an outlier, a lucky accident. She had no idea what she was dealing with. Sarah Chen's voice cut through his thoughts. "Contestants, take your positions. We're about to begin round 1. Remember, there are no second chances on MathQuest Live. Every calculation counts. Every second matters." The theme music swelled. The audience erupted into fresh applause. The cameras moved into position, red lights blinking. Jaden Hayes, 12 years old, from an apartment that smelled like antiseptic and mildew, wearing a hoodie with a stain on the sleeve and shoes held together with superglue, stood behind his podium. He didn't look at Brenda, didn't look at the cameras, didn't look at anything except the large screen where the first problem would appear. His hands had stopped shaking. The numbers were about to speak. And numbers, unlike people, didn't lie. But that stage, those lights, Brenda's cold fingers on his hoodie, none of that happened first. 3 months before MathQuest, Jaden was doing calculus on a foggy window at 5 in the morning. Their apartment was small. 1 bedroom for him, pull-out couch for Grandma Max. The whole place smelled wrong. Antiseptic trying to cover mildew that never left no matter how much they scrubbed. Jaden had learned to ignore it. Just like he'd learned to ignore the rattling pipes, the hissing radiator that barely worked the sirens outside at night. Every morning, condensation formed on the kitchen window. Chicago winter made the glass fog up, and Jaden would wake before dawn to write equations in the moisture. His finger traced derivatives, integrals, probability formulas. The numbers appeared like secrets, visible only until the weak heat dried them away. This was how he learned. Window fog, old newspapers from Mr. Chen's recycling bin, the margins of discarded pages where he'd squeeze trigonometric functions between articles about violence and politics. He'd collect newspapers every Tuesday, carry them home in a plastic bag, spread them across his mattress. His pencils were stubs, worn down until they were almost nothing, until holding them made his fingers cramp. He'd use them completely, then find another, sometimes in the street, sometimes at the library. Once he'd walked 40 minutes to a private school uptown just to see it, and found a pack of mechanical pencils in their trash. Those lasted 3 months. Math didn't care where he lived. 2 plus 2 was 4 in a penthouse, and in this apartment. That's what he loved, the absolute fairness of it. But numbers could also tell terrible truths. His mother died when he was 9. Diana Hayes worked as a nurse's aide at County General. 12-hour shifts, sometimes doubles. No health insurance because she was a contractor. No sick days. No way out. She came home that night exhausted, fell asleep on the couch, still wearing her scrubs. Jaden covered her with a blanket, went to bed. She never woke up. Brain aneurysm, they said, a weak blood vessel that finally burst from stress and exhaustion and zero medical care. She died while Jaden slept 10 feet away. He found her at 6 in the morning, called 911, watched paramedics go through motions they knew were pointless. After that, Jaden calculated everything. Survival rates, life expectancy based on income, the probability Grandma Max would live another year, another month, another week. The numbers were terrifying, but they gave him something that felt like control. Grandma Max had been healthy then. She worked at a dry cleaner, $8 an hour, pressing other people's clothes. Not much, but enough. They ate. They kept the lights on. Then came the cancer diagnosis. Stage 3 lung cancer. Never smoked but 40 years in buildings with asbestos and bad ventilation. The cancer didn't care about fairness. Treatment started. Chemo, radiation, pills that cost more than Grandma Max made in a week. Medicare covered some of it. Not enough. Not nearly enough. The bills came in colored envelopes, pink, red, white with urgent stamped across them. Final notice, past due collections. Jaden found them 2 months ago. He'd been looking for extra blankets under Grandma Max's mattress. His hand touched paper instead, a thick stack rubber-banded together. He pulled them out, sat on her bed, started reading. Medical bills, dozens of them. Hospital charges, specialists, medications with names he couldn't pronounce. Lab work, CT scans, procedures he didn't understand. At the bottom was a summary statement. One number printed in black ink. $520, 000. Someone had circled it in red marker. The circle was shaky, drawn by a hand that was probably trembling. Jaden's brain did the math automatically. Grandma Max made roughly $16, 000 a year before taxes. To pay $520, 000 at that rate would take 32 years. She was 68. Stage 3 cancer gave her maybe 5 more years with treatment. There was no equation where this worked out. No formula. No solution. He heard her coughing in the living room. That wet, deep sound that meant the cancer was spreading. Jaden put the bills back exactly as he'd found them, went to the bathroom, threw up. That's when he knew what he had to do. The next day, he went to the library, waited for a computer. The machines were old, barely functional, but they had internet. He searched MathQuest live auditions. The show was massive. 5 million viewers per episode. Prize money, $550, 000. Almost exactly what they owed. Jaden watched previous seasons. Winners from elite prep schools. Kids with private tutors and parents who were professors. Nobody like him. Nobody from Southside. But the math problems, he could solve those. He'd been doing harder ones on newspaper margins for years. He positioned himself in front of the library's webcam. The quality was terrible. The microphone picked up every sound in the room. He hit record anyway. "My name is Jaden Hayes. I'm 12 years old." His voice shook. He cleared his throat. "I can solve your problems faster than anyone. Not because I'm a genius, because I don't have time to waste." He looked straight at the camera. "My grandmother has cancer. We owe $520,000 in medical bills. She's refusing her second round of chemo to save money for my high school tuition." His voice cracked on the last word. "I need your prize money. I needed to keep her alive. Then he solved one of their previous final round problems, on camera. 7 minutes. Mental math and scratch paper. He uploaded it, titled it Math Quest Audition Jaden Hayes, Please Watch. Went home, made dinner, pretended everything was normal. The video hit 1,000 views overnight, 10,000 by morning, 100,000 by the next day. By the end of the week, 8 million people had watched it. The comments exploded. People were crying, raging, sharing it everywhere. Twitter threads about healthcare, Facebook posts about inequality. News sites picked it up. Boy genius fights to save grandmother. Math Quest's executive producer, Richard Morrison, saw something better than a sad story. He saw ratings gold. He saw a season that would break records. He called Jaden's house personally. Son, we want you to compete. Main competition. Skip auditions entirely. Jaden stood in their kitchen holding the cracked plastic landline. The judges approved. A pause. They will. What Morrison didn't say was that Brenda Whitmore Kent had fought it, called Jaden's video emotional manipulation and circus entertainment. But Morrison had his own numbers, projected viewership, ad revenue, engagement metrics. Brenda got overruled. The moment Jaden hung up, he moved. Marcus Thompson lived 3 floors down, still had his library card. I need to borrow this, Jaden said. What for? Math books. Marcus handed it over. That's how Southside worked. You helped because nobody else would. Then Keisha Williams, Darius Jones, every kid he knew from school, from the block from the basketball court on 51st. By evening, he had 11 library cards. He went downtown to the main branch, the one with the advanced math section, started pulling books, advanced calculus, number theory, abstract algebra, topology, combinatorics, books nobody ever checked out. The librarian stared at his stack. This is a lot for a 12-year-old. Yes, ma'am. You planning to read all this? By next week, ma'am. She stamped every book, didn't ask more questions. Jaden made 2 trips carrying them home. His arms burned. He stacked them beside his mattress, started reading immediately. 1 week until the first taping. 1 week to learn what usually took years. 1 week to prepare for Brenda Whitmore Kent's world. Grandma Max found him at midnight surrounded by open books equations covering every flat surface. Baby, you need sleep. Can't. Have to study. She sat on his mattress. Her hand on his shoulder felt light as paper. You don't have to do this. We'll figure something out. He looked at her. The dark circles, the protruding collarbone, the medical bracelet she never removed. He thought about those bills under her mattress. He thought about her refusing chemo to save money for his future. Yeah, he said quietly. I do. She pulled him close. He felt how thin she'd become, how fragile, like she might disappear. Then show them, she whispered. Show them what Southside can do. That week, Jaden barely slept. He absorbed differential equations, memorized theorems, learned notation systems he'd never seen. His fingers cramped from writing. His eyes burned from reading in bad light. He wrote formulas on fogged glass every morning, on newspaper margins every afternoon, on the cardboard he'd pulled from dumpsters, on his own arms when he ran out of paper. The numbers became everything. They had to be. Numbers were the only weapon he had against people like Brenda, against a system designed to keep kids like him out. 3 months later, he'd stand on that stage, under those lights, with Brenda's cold fingers adjusting his hoodie like he was something dirty. But first, he had to survive that week, had to transform from a kid who solved problems on foggy windows into someone who could compete on national television. The numbers would carry him. They always had. Numbers didn't lie. Numbers didn't judge. Numbers didn't care about your address or your bank account. Numbers were fair. And fairness was all Jaden had ever asked for. 2 days after his video went viral, Jaden got a text from an unknown number. 416 South Wabash, 3rd floor, office 307. Come alone. 6 p.m. tomorrow. A friend. Jaden stared at his phone. He almost deleted it. Scams happened all the time in Southside, but something about the message felt different, specific, real. He went. The building was old, tucked between a pawn shop and a boarded-up restaurant, the kind of place people forgot existed. Jaden climbed 3 flights of stairs that smelled like dust and old paper. Found office 307 at the end of a dim hallway. The door was unlocked. Inside, a woman sat at a desk covered in files and notebooks. She was black, maybe 40, with natural hair pulled back, and glasses that looked expensive but old. The office was small, cramped. File cabinets lined one wall. A single window showed the alley outside. She looked up when Jaden entered. "Close the door." He did. "Sit down, Jaden." He sat in the chair across from her. It wobbled. "Who are you?" "Dr. Naomi Crawford." She extended her hand. Her grip was firm, warm. "I used to be a mathematics professor. Now I'm an accountant for a medical supply company." Jaden waited. "I know why you're doing MathQuest," Crawford said. She pulled a folder from her desk, opened it. Inside was a printout of his video. "Your grandmother. The bills." "I know because I've been there. Different details, same story." "Why did you want to meet me?" Crawford leaned back. Her chair creaked. "Because Brenda Whitmore Kent destroyed my career 7 years ago, and I'm not going to let her do it to you." The words hung in the air between them. "I was on MathQuest," Crawford continued. "Season 3. I made it to the finals. I was 23, just finished my PhD from MIT, youngest black woman to ever get that far on the show." She paused. "Brenda was the head judge even then." "What happened?" "She happened." Crawford's voice went flat. "Final round. She gave me a problem using notation I'd never seen. British classical notation from the 1800s. It's not taught anymore, not in American universities. I spent 12 minutes trying to decode the symbols instead of solving the actual math." Jaden felt something cold settle in his stomach. "I lost," Crawford said, publicly, humiliatingly. "And Brenda made sure everyone knew it wasn't the math that beat me. It was my inadequate classical education. Code for, you don't belong here." She removed her glasses, cleaned them on her shirt. "2 universities rescinded their job offers, said I wasn't ready for rigorous academic environments. I ended up doing corporate accounting to pay my student loans. I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. Be prepared." Crawford pulled another folder from her desk. This one was thick, bulging with papers. She opened it flat on the desk between them. Inside were photocopies, hundreds of them, math problems, handwritten notes, printed equations. 5 years of Brenda's problems, Crawford said. Every question she's ever posed on MathQuest. I've been collecting them, analyzing them, looking for patterns. Jaden leaned forward. His eyes scanned the pages. "She has a system," Crawford said. She pulled out a sheet covered in her own annotations. "Brenda doesn't just test math knowledge. She tests your ability to navigate her world. Look here." She pointed to a problem from Season 4. The notation was strange, unfamiliar. Symbols Jaden had never seen in any of his library books. "British classical notation," Crawford explained. "She uses it constantly. It's mathematically equivalent to modern notation, but it looks completely different. If you don't know how to read it, you waste precious time trying to translate instead of solving." She pulled out more examples, problem after problem, using the same archaic symbols. "It's deliberate," Crawford said. "Public schools don't teach this, but elite prep schools, private tutors, they still cover it as part of mathematical history. It's a class marker, a way to identify who belongs and who doesn't." Jaden felt anger rising in his chest. "That's not mathematics, that's gatekeeping." "Exactly." Crawford smiled for the first time. It was sharp knowing. "Welcome to how the game actually works." She spent the next hour teaching him, going through each symbol, each notation variant, drilling them into his memory. The work was tedious, but necessary. Jaden absorbed it all, writing examples in a notebook Crawford gave him. "There's something else you need to understand," Crawford said. She leaned forward, her voice dropping. "Brenda doesn't just use notation tricks. She uses psychological warfare." "What do you mean?" "She fills her problems with noise, extra information, irrelevant data, things designed to occupy your working memory, to make you lose track of what actually matters." Crawford tapped her temple. "Your brain can only hold so much at once. She knows this. She exploits it. How do I fight that?" "You learn to filter, to see what's real and what's distraction." Crawford pulled out another sheet, showed him a problem loaded with unnecessary variables, redundant equations, decorative complexity. "This looks terrifying, but strip away the noise and it's just a basic differential equation. You have to learn to see through her tricks." They worked until Jaden's hand cramped from writing, until the window showed full darkness outside. "One more thing," Crawford said as Jaden stood to leave. "Watch her face. If Brenda smiles, she's set a trap. If she goes quiet, you're winning." Jaden nodded, took the notebook she'd given him, started toward the door. "Jaden." He turned back. "You're not alone in this," Crawford said quietly. "A lot of us got crushed by that system. We're rooting for you. All of us." The first taping was in 2 days. Jaden spent those days memorizing Crawford's notes, practicing the notation learning to spot the noise. His confidence grew. He had a weapon now. He had knowledge. The morning of the taping, he arrived at the studio early. They put him in a green room with the other contestants. Everyone looked polished, prepared. Designer clothes, expensive haircuts, the kind of casual confidence that came from never doubting you belonged. Jaden sat in the corner in his hoodie, reviewing formulas in his head. The door opened. A tall kid walked in, white, maybe 17, wearing clothes that probably cost more than Jaden's entire wardrobe. He had that easy, athletic build, perfect teeth hair that looked professionally styled. Logan Sterling. Jaden recognized him from the contestant list. Logan walked straight to him, extended his hand. "Jaden Hayes, right, I watched your video. Really inspiring stuff, man." Jaden shook his hand. Logan's grip was firm but not aggressive, genuine. "I'm Logan." He sat down next to Jaden uninvited, pulled something from his pocket. "Hey, I brought you something." It was a pen. Not just any pen, a stylus pen, the kind that worked with tablets and touchscreens. Sleek silver metal, probably cost $200. "For the competition," Logan said, placing it in Jaden's hand. "I have like 3 of these. Figured you could use it. The tablets they give us can be finicky with regular touch." Jaden stared at the pen. It was heavier than it looked, expensive, thoughtful, and it made him feel like garbage. "Thanks," he managed. "No problem." Logan smiled. It seemed genuine, kind even. "We're all in this together, right, May? The best mathematician win." He clapped Jaden on the shoulder and walked away to talk to other contestants. Jaden looked at the pen in his hand. This was charity. Kindness from someone who had so much he could give away $200 pens without thinking. Logan probably meant well, probably saw himself as a good guy helping the poor kid, but it made Jaden feel small, reminded him exactly where he stood in this world, the recipient of generosity, the project, the inspiration porn. He pocketed the pen anyway. Pride didn't solve math problems. That night, back in the hotel room, MathQuest had provided his phone buzzed. Another text from Crawford. "Remember, Brenda fights with psychology, not just mathematics. She'll try to get in your head. Don't let her. You're smarter than she thinks. You're stronger than she knows. When she smiles, she's set a trap. When she goes silent, you're winning. Trust your mind. Trust the numbers. They don't lie." Jaden read it 3 times, saved it, turned off his phone. Tomorrow was the first round. Tomorrow he'd face Brenda on her stage, under her rules, in her world. But he had Crawford's knowledge now. He had the patterns. He understood the game. He lay in the hotel bed, the nicest bed he'd ever slept in, and ran through British classical notation in his head, practiced filtering noise from signal, prepared for psychological warfare disguised as mathematics. The numbers were fair. Brenda wasn't. But Jaden wasn't just some poor kid from Southside anymore. He was a poor kid from Southside who knew exactly how the game was rigged. And that made all the difference. Round 1 had been a bloodbath. 8 contestants entered. 3 were eliminated in the first hour. Jaden survived, but barely. The problems were harder than anything he'd practiced, delivered at a pace designed to induce panic. He'd made it through on pure calculation speed-solving problems, while his heart hammered against his ribs. Now, round 2. 4 contestants left. Different rules. Sarah Chen stood center stage in a dress that caught the lights like liquid silver. "Welcome back to MathQuest Live tonight. Our remaining 4 contestants face their greatest challenge yet." The audience erupted. Jaden stood at his podium, hands gripping the edge. Logan Sterling was 2 positions over, looking calm as ever. The other 2 contestants, Maya Cho from San Francisco and David Park from Boston, both looked terrified. "In round 2, Sarah continued, her voice building drama. "Each contestant will choose their judge. That judge will create a custom problem specifically for you. Solve it in 15 minutes, and you advance to the semifinals. Fail, and you're eliminated." Jaden's stomach tightened. Custom problems, meaning personal, meaning targeted. Our judges tonight, the compassionate Dr. Rodriguez, specializing in applied mathematics. Applause. Dr. Rodriguez smiled, waved. He had a reputation for being fair, encouraging. The brilliant Dr. Aldridge, expert in theoretical physics. More applause. Aldridge nodded seriously. And of course, our head judge, the incomparable Brenda Whitmore, Kent Cambridge's finest, specializing in pure mathematics. Brenda didn't wave, didn't smile, just sat there like a queen waiting for subjects to approach. "Maya Cho," Sarah said, "you're first. Choose your judge." Maya chose Dr. Rodriguez immediately. Smart, safe. The audience clapped their approval. David Park chose Dr. Aldridge, also safe. Logan Sterling hesitated for exactly 3 seconds, then chose Brenda. The audience gasped. Logan walked to the main stage, shook Brenda's hand. She smiled at him. Actually smiled. Then it was Jaden's turn. "Jaden Hayes," Sarah said, her voice warm with that practiced sympathy. "Who do you choose?" The audience started chanting before Jaden could speak. "Rodriguez, Rodriguez, Rodriguez." They wanted him to choose the easy path, the safe judge, the one who'd give him a fair shot. Even Sarah looked at him with an expression that said, "Please, kid, don't do something stupid." Jaden looked at Dr. Rodriguez. The man gave him an encouraging nod. Then Jaden looked at Brenda. She sat there perfectly still watching him, waiting, probably expecting him to take the safe choice to prove he was smart enough to avoid unnecessary risk. Crawford's words came back to him. "Brenda destroyed my career because I wasn't prepared for her tricks. Don't let her do it to you when it matters most." If Jaden chose someone else now, he'd face Brenda eventually, in the semifinals or the finals, when the pressure was even higher, when there was even more to lose. Better to fight this battle now on his terms with Crawford's knowledge fresh in his mind. 5 seconds of silence. The audience chant faded, confused by his hesitation. Jaden looked straight at Brenda. "I choose Judge Brenda." The studio went dead quiet, then exploded into shocked noise. Sarah's eyes went wide. The other judges looked surprised. Even Logan, standing off to the side after completing his problem, turned to stare. Brenda's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Interest, maybe, or anticipation. "Well," Sarah said, recovering quickly, "that's unexpected Jaden Hayes taking the bold route. Let's see what Judge Brenda has prepared for you." Jaden walked to the main stage. His legs felt steady. His hands weren't shaking anymore. This was it. This was the fight. Brenda stood from her chair, moved to the large digital board. She picked up the stylus and for a moment just looked at Jaden. "Brave choice," she said quietly so only he could hear. "Or foolish. We'll see which." Then she started writing. The equation appeared on the screen, projected for everyone to see. It was modular arithmetic complex number theory symbols layered on symbols. And there, woven throughout, was British classical notation. The archaic symbols Crawford had taught him to recognize, but this was worse than anything Crawford had shown him. This was Cambridge notation, even older, even more obscure. Symbols from the 19th century that looked like modern math but meant completely different things. The audience murmured. Most of them couldn't read it at all. It looked like advanced mathematics. It was actually a deliberate maze. Brenda finished writing, stepped back. "You have 15 minutes. Beginning now." The clock appeared on screen. 15:00. Started counting down. Jaden stared at the board. His mind raced, trying to decode the symbols. The problem was, about Riemann zeta functions, he could see that much. But the notation made it nearly impossible to parse what was actually being asked. He closed his eyes. The audience gasped. Closing your eyes during a timed math competition looked like giving up, like panic. The cameras zoomed in on his face. Jaden could feel them hungry for his failure. Sweat ran down his temple. His breathing slowed. He blocked out everything, the audience, the cameras, Brenda standing there watching him. In his mind, he saw Crawford's office, her notes, the patterns she'd shown him. British classical notation used different symbols for integration. Cambridge notation used reversed operators. He just had to translate first, then solve. "Livestream doesn't have a pause button, Jaden." Brenda's voice cut through his concentration, mocking, loud enough for the microphones to catch. The audience laughed nervously. Jaden opened his eyes. He picked up Logan's pen, the expensive stylus Logan had given him, walked to the board, started writing. But he didn't solve the problem. Not directly. Instead, he started translating, right there on camera for everyone to see. He took Brenda's archaic Cambridge notation and converted it symbol by symbol into modern international standard notation. The audience went quiet watching. They didn't understand what he was doing, but they could see it was deliberate, methodical. Jaden wrote quickly. His hand moved with confidence Crawford's training had given him. Each archaic symbol got replaced. Each obscure operator got converted. The problem transformed on the board right in front of 5 million viewers. "What are you doing?" Brenda's voice was sharp. Jaden didn't answer, kept writing. When he finished the translation, something became clear, visible, obvious. The problem had two possible interpretations. One of Brenda's symbols, a modified integral sign from Cambridge 1847, was ambiguous. It could mean integration over a complex plane, or it could mean a summation over discrete values. Both were valid readings of that specific notation. Both would give different answers. Jayden turned to face Brenda. "Your notation is unclear. This symbol here," he pointed, "has dual meaning in Cambridge classical notation. It was deprecated in 1872 for exactly this reason." Brenda's face went pale, just slightly, just enough for the cameras to catch. "The problem has two valid interpretations," Jayden continued. He turned back to the board. "So, I'll solve both." The clock showed 10:47 remaining. Jayden's hand moved across the board. He split his work into two columns. Left side interpretation 1, right side interpretation 2. Mathematics flowed from his pen like water. No hesitation, no doubt, pure calculation. The audience was silent now. Even the judges leaned forward, watching. Interpretation 1 led to a convergent series. Interpretation 2 led to a divergent integral. Both were mathematically sound based on how you read Brenda's deliberately ambiguous notation. Jayden finished with 2 minutes to spare, stepped back from the board, turned to Brenda. "Both solutions are correct depending on how you parse the archaic notation. If you want a single answer, you'll need to clarify which interpretation you intended." Brenda stood frozen. Her jaw was tight, her hands clenched at her sides. Sarah Chen looked confused. "Judge Brenda is this correct?" The technical advisory panel, 3 mathematicians who verified answers, were huddled together, checking Jayden's work on their tablets, whispering urgently. Finally, Dr. Chen from the panel stood up. "Both solutions are mathematically valid. The contestant is correct that the original notation was ambiguous. We confirm his work as accurate." The audience exploded, cheering, shouting applause that shook the studio. Sarah was trying to say something, but nobody could hear her over the noise. Jayden looked at Brenda. She was staring at the board, at her own notation exposed and translated for everyone to see. Her trick revealed, her weapon dismantled. She looked at Jayden. For the first time, there was no condescension in her eyes, no mockery, just cold recognition. He'd beaten her, not just solved her problem, but exposed her method, shown 5 million people exactly how she'd been gatekeeping mathematics behind archaic notation. "Jayden Hayes advances to the semifinals," Sarah shouted over the noise. In the control room, the producer was watching viewership numbers spike. 15 million concurrent viewers, 20 million, the highest ratings in MathQuest history. On Twitter, #Jayden the Genius was trending worldwide. Clips of him translating Brenda's notation were being shared thousands of times per minute. Mathematics professors were posting threads explaining what he'd done, how brilliant it was to expose the ambiguity rather than just pick an interpretation. Jayden walked back to his podium. Logan Sterling caught his eye, gave him a small nod. Respect. Brenda sat back down at the judges' table. Her face was composed again, professional. But Jayden had seen behind the mask, had seen the moment she realized he wasn't just some poor kid who got lucky. He was a threat dot, and the real war was just beginning. The hotel room door was open when Jayden returned. Not ajar, wide open. The lock looked fine, but the door hung there like someone had been waiting for him to see this. Jayden stepped inside. His stomach dropped. Everything was destroyed. His duffel bag lay emptied on the floor, contents scattered. The mattress had been pulled off the bed. His extra hoodie was torn down the middle, but the real damage was on the desk. The laptop borrowed from Southside Public Library on Marcus Thompson's card sat in pieces. Screen shattered. Keyboard ripped off, keys scattered everywhere. Someone had smashed it with something heavy over and over until the internal components were exposed and mangled. $300. That's what the library would charge him. $300 he didn't have. Then Jayden saw the bathtub. Crawford's notes. That precious folder with 5 years of Brenda's patterns, all the research Crawford had compiled, it was in the bathtub. Someone had turned on the faucet, let water run over every page until the ink bled into nothing. Formulas dissolved, paper turned to mush. Jayden picked up a page. It fell apart in his hands. His phone buzzed. A news alert. MathQuest scandal video suggests contestant used hidden earpiece. Jayden opened it with shaking hands. There was footage from round 2. The moment he'd closed his eyes, but it had been edited, zoomed way in on his ear. The caption claimed you could see a wireless earpiece feeding him answers. The video was everywhere. Twitter, Facebook, Reddit threads arguing whether the footage was real or doctored. The article quoted Brenda, "I cannot comment on ongoing investigations, but MathQuest must maintain the highest standards of integrity. If any contestant has compromised that integrity, appropriate action must be taken." Careful words. But the message was clear. Jaden was a cheater. A knock on his door made him jump. "Mr. Hayes, Richard Morrison, we need to talk." Jaden opened the door. Morrison stood there with 2 security guards and a woman in a suit holding a tablet. "I didn't cheat," Jaden said. "Nobody's accusing you." Morrison's smile was empty. "But given the online allegations, we're implementing isolation protocol. Until the finals, no outside contact, no phone, no visitors, no internet. You're locking me up. We're ensuring competition integrity. Miss Park will document your room." Morrison's voice went hard. "Cooperate or withdraw. Your choice." Jaden thought about Grandma Max. The $520,000. The fact that withdrawing meant losing everything. "I'll cooperate." They took his phone, photographed the destroyed laptop and ruined notes, but showed zero interest in whodunit. Miss Park logged everything as damaged personal items and moved on. "One more thing," Morrison said. "No family contact until after finals, including your grandmother. She's sick. I need to know she's okay. We'll have someone check on her. You'll get updates through official channels." Morrison headed for the door. 3 days, Mr. Hayes." They left. The electronic lock clicked from outside. Jaden was trapped. He sat on the bare mattress trying to breathe. The room felt smaller, smelled like cleaning chemicals. His mind ran calculations, odds of winning without notes, odds of surviving this pressure, odds of Grandma Max making it 3 more days without hearing from him. The numbers looked bad. Night came. Around 11 p.m., Jaden heard voices outside, young voices calling his name. He went to the window. Below in the parking lot, maybe 30 kids clustered together, hoodies and sneakers. They looked like Southside. They held up their phones. Screens glowing in darkness. Jaden squinted, trying to see what they were showing him. Mathematical formulas, written on paper, photographed, held up on phone screens so he could see from the 4th floor. The Pythagorean theorem, Euler's identity, basic quadratic formulas. Some of the math was wrong, but that didn't matter. They'd made these for him. More kids arrived. 50, 70. A constellation of phone lights across the parking lot, each displaying a different equation. His people. Southside kids who understood what this fight meant. Jaden pressed his hand against the window glass. Tears finally came. He wasn't alone. Security dispersed them eventually, but the image stayed burned in Jaden's mind. Around 2 a.m., Jaden couldn't take the confinement anymore. The door was still electronically locked, but the fire exit down the hall wasn't monitored the same way. He slipped out through the fire stairs. Nobody stopped him. He walked into the night without direction, just needing to move. His feet carried him through unfamiliar streets until he found himself in front of a laundromat. Wash and Dream, open 24 hours. Half the letters were burned out. Through the window, Jaden saw fluorescent lights, rows of machines, and a small sign, free Wi-Fi. The only free Wi-Fi in this neighborhood. He went inside. An old man slept in a plastic chair. A woman folded clothes while watching a small TV. Neither looked at him. Didn't care why a 12-year-old walked in at 2:30 a.m. Jaden sat on the floor between 2 washers. The tile was cold. The machines hummed steadily. Nobody would think to look for him here. He had no paper, no pencil, no laptop. Just his mind and whatever he could improvise. There was a marker on the folding table. Blue laundry marker left behind. Jaden took it. He started writing on the dryer's white surface. Probability equations. Modular arithmetic. The patterns Crawford had taught him. Mathematics appearing in blue marker on white enamel. When that surface was full, he moved to the next machine. Then the next. The woman glanced at him, once shrugged, went back to her TV. Jaden worked through the night, writing on every surface he could find. Dryers, washers, the plastic folding table, the floor tiles. Mathematics flowing from memory onto whatever canvas existed. This was how he'd always learned anyway. Windows, newspapers, cardboard. Why should expensive hotels be different? The numbers didn't care where they lived. They worked the same on a laundromat dryer as on Brenda's pristine digital board. Dawn light filtered through dirty windows. Jaden had covered nearly every surface with equations. The place looked like a mathematician's fever dream. The woman left. The old man woke up, looked around at all the writing, laughed. "Kids possessed," he muttered, starting his wash. Jaden's hand ached from gripping the marker. His back hurt from sitting on cold tile. His eyes burned from no sleep. But his mind was clear, sharp, ready. Brenda had taken his materials. Morrison had locked him away. Anonymous saboteurs had destroyed his resources, but they couldn't take what was in his head, couldn't destroy the knowledge Crawford had given him, couldn't break the foundation he'd built solving problems on foggy windows for years. Jaden stood up, stretched, looked at the mathematical chaos covering the laundromat. This was his education, his world, his battlefield. In 60 hours, he'd show Brenda exactly what that was worth. 3 days of isolation ended with a knock on Jaden's door at 6 a.m. Finals are tonight. Car leaves in 1 hour. Jaden had barely slept. He'd spent the last 72 hours reviewing everything in his head, every pattern Crawford taught him, every formula he'd written on laundromat machines, every trick Brenda might use. His mind felt sharp, but fragile, like a blade that had been honed too many times. They gave him his phone back. 37 missed calls from Grandma Max's number. He called back immediately. "Baby." Her voice sounded weak, tired. "I'm here. I'm okay. Are you okay? Don't you worry about me. You just go show them what Southside can do." The line went dead. They'd given him exactly 90 seconds. The studio that night was different, bigger. The main stage had been transformed into an arena. 2 podiums faced each other across a vast digital screen. Stadium seating wrapped around them in a semicircle. Every seat was filled. The energy felt electric dangerous. Jaden walked out in his gray hoodie. Same one from round 1, same one Brenda had adjusted with her cold fingers. But this time he'd rolled the sleeves up to his elbows. His forearms were visible. No place to hide anything. No earpiece conspiracies tonight. His eyes had changed. The cameras caught it immediately. Not the nervous 12-year-old from 3 months ago. Something harder, colder. A fighter who'd been through war and come out sharper. Logan Sterling stood at the opposite podium in a tailored tuxedo. Actual tuxedo with tails like this was a wedding or a funeral. His hair was perfect. His smile was calm. He looked like he belonged here, like he'd been born for this moment. They made eye contact across the stage. Logan nodded once. Respect. Jaden nodded back. Sarah Chen appeared center stage in a dress that looked like liquid gold. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Math Quest Live Finals tonight. 2 extraordinary competitors will face 5 problems. The competitor with the most points wins $550,000. The audience erupted. Jaden could see Grandma Max in the front row. She looked so small in that seat, so fragile. But she was smiling. That's what mattered. Our judges tonight, Dr. Rodriguez, Dr. Aldridge, and head judge Brenda Whitmore Kent. Brenda walked out. She wore all black. Looked like she was attending an execution. Her eyes swept over Jaden with an expression he couldn't read. Not contempt anymore. Something more complicated. Wariness, maybe. Contestants, take your positions. Problem 1 begins in 60 seconds. Jaden's heart hammered against his ribs. His hands gripped the edges of his podium. Logan looked relaxed, breathing steadily, probably doing some meditation technique his private tutors taught him. The clock appeared. 60 seconds counting down. Problem 1 materialized on the massive screen. A differential equation complex, but straightforward. 12 minutes to solve. The buzzer sounded. Logan's hands flew across his tablet. His stylus moved with machine precision. He'd clearly practiced on this exact setup, knew exactly how the interface worked. Jaden used Logan's pen, the expensive one Logan had given him back in round 2. It felt right. A weapon borrowed from an honorable opponent. He worked through the problem systematically. Separated variables, integrated both sides, applied boundary conditions. His solution appeared on screen for everyone to see, projected in real time. Logan finished first, 10 minutes, 43 seconds. Jaden finished second, 11 minutes, 12 seconds. Both answers appeared side by side, identical, both correct. Point to Logan Sterling for speed, Sarah announced. Score Logan 1, Jaden 0. Problem 2 came immediately. No rest, no pause. Number theory this time. Finding prime factorization of a massive composite number. Logan attacked it with raw computational power. His calculator was top of the line, probably programmed with custom algorithms. Jaden used a different approach. He recognized the number's structure, saw a pattern that let him eliminate possibilities. Creative proof instead of brute force. He finished first this time. 9 minutes, 8 seconds. Logan finished at 9 minutes, 51 seconds. Both correct again. Point to Jaden Hayes. Sarah's voice carried genuine excitement. Score Logan 1, Jaden 1. The audience was on their feet. This was closer than any finals in MathQuest history. Two geniuses trading blows, pure mathematics at the highest level. Problem 3 appeared. Jaden's blood went cold the moment he saw it. It was probability, combinatorics, finding the likelihood of a specific arrangement in an absurdly complex system. The kind of problem that required calculating permutations across multiple variables, accounting for restrictions, and conditions that multiplied exponentially. 12 minutes to solve. Logan immediately grabbed his calculator, started programming formulas. His fingers moved desperately fast. He knew this was going to be tight. Jaden stared at the problem. Read it once, twice, 3 times. Something was wrong. He started calculating in his head, not the solution, the scope. How many variables were actually involved? How many calculations would be required? His stomach dropped. The problem had 10 circumflex 25 variables. 10 to the 25th power. That's a 1 followed by 25 zeros. The number of possible arrangements exceeded the number of atoms in the observable universe. Logan was still frantically working. Sweat appeared on his forehead. He'd been working for 8 minutes, producing partial calculations, probably trying to narrow the scope. Jaden set his stylus down. The audience murmured. Giving up? Was he giving up? 10 minutes elapsed. 11 minutes. Logan's calculations covered his entire screen, complex formulas cascading down the display. 11 minutes, 30 seconds. Jaden picked up his stylus, but he didn't write mathematics. He wrote words. Problem contains 10 circumflex 25 variables. Solving in 12 minutes is computationally impossible without pre-knowing the answer. 2 minutes remaining. Sarah looked confused. The judges huddled together. Brenda's face was stone. Jaden turned toward the judges' table, looked directly at Brenda. "Excuse me, Judge Whitmore Kent. This problem contains 10 to the 25th power variables. Solving it in 12 minutes would require computational capacity beyond human capability, unless someone had already calculated the answer." His voice was calm, steady, but the implication hung in the air like smoke. The audience went dead silent. Brenda stood up. Her face was flushed. "That's an outrageous accusation. The problem is solvable with proper technique and—" "Then solve it." Jaden's voice cut through hers. "Right now. Show us the solution." The silence stretched. Brenda's mouth opened, closed. She looked at the technical advisory panel. Logan had stopped working, was staring at the problem with new eyes, realization dawning on his face. He'd been trying to solve an impossible problem for 10 minutes. The buzzer sounded. Time expired. Logan's partial solution appeared on screen. Incomplete. Jaden's statement appeared next to it. Dr. Rodriguez stood up from the judges' panel. "We need to consult with the technical advisory board. This is unprecedented." The studio erupted into chaos. Audience members shouting, cameras swiveling, Sarah trying to restore order. Morrison appeared from backstage, walking quickly to the judges' table. Heated discussion. The technical advisory board, 3 mathematicians with tablets were frantically calculating something. 5 minutes passed. 10 minutes. The audience was getting restless. Finally, Dr. Chen from the advisory board approached the microphone. His face was grave. "After careful review, we've determined that problem 3 contains computational complexity that exceeds reasonable solving time. The problem requires approximately 10 to the 25th power calculations to solve completely. Even with advanced computing techniques, this would take several hours minimum." The audience exploded. Twitter hashtags started trending immediately. #MathQuest scandal. #Brenda cheating. #Jaden was right. Dr. Chen continued, his voice barely audible over the noise. "According to MathQuest rules, section 4.7, judge accountability. If a problem is deemed unfeasible within the given time frame, it is invalidated. Therefore, problem 3 is void. No points are awarded to either contestant." Brenda sat motionless at the judges' table. Her face was pale. Her hands gripped the desk edge. Sarah eventually restored order. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have an unprecedented situation. Problem 3 has been invalidated. The score remains tied. Score Logan 1, Jaden 1. We will now proceed to problem 4. This problem has been reviewed and approved by the Independent Advisory Board." The audience was still buzzing. Morrison looked furious backstage. Brenda looked like she wanted to disappear. Logan caught Jaden's eye again. This time, his expression was different. Not just respect, amazement. He mouthed something that looked like, "Holy shit." Jaden felt exhausted. He'd just accused Brenda Whitmore Kent of rigging a problem on live television with 20 million people watching. He'd challenged the entire system, and he'd been right. But the finals weren't over. 2 more problems remained. 2 more chances to win or lose everything. Problem 4 appeared on screen. Sarah's voice cut through the remaining murmurs. 12 minutes, beginning, now. The buzzer sounded. Jaden picked up his stylus. His hand was steady. His mind was clear. The numbers didn't lie. They never had. And right now, the numbers were all that mattered. Problem 4 was topology. Problem 5 would decide everything. Logan had won Problem 4 by 18 seconds. Score now stood at Logan 2. Jaden won. 1 problem left. Winner takes all. The studio felt like it was holding its breath. 20 million people watching worldwide. Every camera focused on the 2 podiums. 2 boys, 2 different worlds. 1 prize. Sarah Chen's voice was almost reverent. Ladies and gentlemen, we come to Problem 5. The final problem, 15 minutes. Whoever solves this correctly wins MathQuest Live and $550,000. The audience was completely silent. Brenda Whitmore Kent stood from the judge's table. For the first time all night, she smiled. That cold, confident smile that said she knew something nobody else did. I will present the final problem personally, she announced. She walked to the center stage, picked up a digital stylus. The main screen cleared, waiting for her to write. This is a Diophantine equation, Brenda said, her voice carrying across the studio. High-degree modular arithmetic, one of the most elegant problems in number theory. She began writing. The equation appeared on screen complex and intimidating. Variables raised to powers, modular conditions, constraints that wove through the problem like thorns. When she finished, Brenda turned to face the cameras. I have spent 2 months calculating this problem. I can confirm with absolute certainty that it has exactly 1 solution. She paused for effect. X equals 74. She wrote it on screen. X equals sign 74. 15 minutes to prove or disprove my solution. Beginning now. The buzzer sounded. Logan immediately started working. His stylus flew across his tablet. He filled 1 screen, swiped to a second, started filling that. His approach was systematic, methodical, working through the modular arithmetic step by step to verify if x equals sign 74 actually satisfied the equation. Jaden stared at the problem, read it carefully, started working through the algebra in his head. Something felt wrong. He picked up his stylus, wrote 3 lines in the corner of his screen. Basic substitution, testing Brenda's answer. If x equals sign 74, then x3 equals sign 743 equals sign 405, 224. He calculated 405, 224, modulo 101. The remainder was... His blood went cold. Jaden looked up at Grandma Max in the front row. She was leaning forward, hands clasped together. Her face was tense with concentration and hope. He went back to his calculation, checked it again. The remainder, when you divided 405, 224 by 101, was 4. Not 0. Not even close to 0. But according to Brenda's equation, after subtracting the constant term, the result had to equal 0 modulo 101. That's what modulo 101 inches meant. The remainder had to be 0. 74 wasn't the answer. 74 couldn't be the answer. Which meant either Jaden was wrong or Brenda was. 8 minutes elapsed. Logan had filled 3 full screens with calculations. He was testing Brenda's answer methodically, working through every step to verify it. Jaden wrote nothing else. Just those 3 lines. Testing. Thinking. 10 minutes. Then Jaden saw it. Saw what this actually was. This wasn't about finding the solution. This was about recognizing that no solution existed. The equation was impossible. The modular constraints made it unsolvable over the integers. Brenda had either made a catastrophic error or she deliberately created an impossible problem and announced a false answer to see if anyone would challenge her. 12 minutes. Movement in the audience. Gasping. Jaden's eyes snapped to the front row. Grandma Max was slumping forward in her seat. Her hand clutched her chest. Her face had gone gray. "Grandma!" Jaden shouted. Medical staff rushed toward her. People in nearby seats jumped up. The cameras immediately swung toward the commotion, capturing everything. Jaden's body moved on instinct. He stepped away from his podium, started running toward the edge of the stage. "Jaden Hayes," Sarah Chen's voice cut through the chaos. "If you leave the competition area before time expires, you will be disqualified. You will lose everything." Jaden froze at the edge of the stage, 10 feet away from the stairs that led down to the audience, to his grandmother, to the only family he had left. The medical staff had reached Grandma Max. They were checking her pulse, asking her questions. She was conscious, moving, talking to them, but her face, the pain in her face. 2 minutes remaining, Sarah announced. Jaden stood at the edge, every muscle in his body screaming to run to her, to forget the math, forget the money, forget everything except making sure she was okay. Grandma Max turned her head. Even from here, even through her obvious pain, she looked directly at him, shook her head once, firm, clear. Finish it. Jaden, quote, his hands were shaking. His vision blurred with tears he couldn't let fall. Not now, not yet. He turned back to his podium, walked back, picked up his stylus. 90 seconds remaining. His eyes were red, burning. But his mind suddenly felt crystalline clear. He didn't try to find X, didn't try to verify Brenda's answer. Instead, he wrote proof, mathematical proof showing why the equation had no integer solutions, why the modular constraints made it impossible. His stylus moved fast, line after line of logic. If X existed, then this. But that contradicts this. Therefore, no solution exists. 30 seconds. Jaden finished his proof, set down his stylus, looked up at Brenda. She was smiling, still smiling, confident, certain. The buzzer sounded. Time expired. Logan's 3 screens of calculations appeared on the main display. He'd worked through the entire problem testing X equals sign 74 in excruciating detail. His conclusion appeared at the bottom. X equals sign 74 is consistent with the equation. Jaden's proof appeared next to it. 3 screens, clean, logical, ending with, therefore, no integer solution exists. The audience murmured. The 2 answers were completely opposite. Brenda stood up. Her smile widened. I spent 2 months on this problem. I have verified the solution repeatedly. X equals 74. I'm afraid Mr. Hayes has made a fundamental error. Jaden's voice was hoarse but steady. Then substitute it. Plug in 74 and show everyone it works. I don't need to demonstrate basic arithmetic to 74 cubed equals 405,224. Jaden's voice got louder, stronger. That number divided by 101 leaves a remainder of 4, not 0. 4. He turned to look directly at the camera, at 20 million people watching. Your equation requires the result to equal 0 modulo 101, but 74 cubed ends with a remainder of 4. You subtract your constant term, you still don't get 0. You get a remainder of 1. The equation doesn't work. X equals 74 is wrong. Brenda's smile finally cracked. That's impossible. I calculated, then show us. Jaden shouted. His composure broke. All the pressure, all the fear, all the rage of 3 months came pouring out. Show us on the computer. Run the actual calculation. Prove your answer. The technical advisory board was already moving. Dr. Chen approached the main computer terminal. His fingers moved across the keyboard. The entire studio watched the screen. Watched as the computer calculated 743. Watched as it computed the full equation with X equals sign 74. Watched as the result appeared. Remainder 1, not equal to 0 mod 101, and then in large red letters, no solution. The studio exploded into noise. Cameras swung wildly between Jaden, Brenda, Logan, the screen, the audience. Brenda stood frozen at the judge's table. Her face had gone completely white. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. The expensive fountain pen she'd been holding clattered to the desk and rolled off, hitting the floor with a distant crack. Dr. Rodriguez stood up, his voice barely audible over the chaos. The equation has no integer solutions. Jaden Hayes is correct. Logan Sterling's calculations were mathematically sound, but based on the false premise that a solution existed. Sarah Chen looked completely lost. This had never happened in MathQuest history. A head judge's answer proven wrong. On live television, in front of 20 million people, Morrison appeared from backstage, his face purple with rage or embarrassment, or both. He grabbed a microphone, his voice cutting through the noise. Ladies and gentlemen, after verification by the Technical Advisory Board, we can confirm that Problem 5 has no integer solutions. The equation as presented was unsolvable. He turned to look at Jaden, then at Logan. However, only one contestant recognized this impossibility and provided mathematical proof. Therefore, by unanimous decision of the judges, he looked at Brenda. She was still standing there, frozen, destroyed. Jaden Hayes is declared the winner of Math Quest Live. The audience erupted. Half the people were on their feet screaming. The other half looked confused, trying to understand what had just happened. Cameras captured everything. Jaden's tear-streaked face, Brenda's complete breakdown, the chaos in the audience where medical staff were still attending to Grandma Max. Logan Sterling stepped down from his podium, walked across the stage to Jaden, extended his hand. Jaden took it. Logan pulled him into a hug, whispered something in his ear that the microphones didn't catch, then stepped back and bowed his head. Deep, respectful, acknowledgement that he'd just witnessed something greater than victory. "You deserved it," Logan said loud enough for the cameras now. "You didn't just win, you proved she was wrong. That's something else entirely." Jaden couldn't speak, could barely breathe. His eyes found the front row where medical staff were helping Grandma Max to her feet. She was okay. Shaky, but okay. And she was smiling. Crying and smiling at the same time. Sarah Chen was trying to restore order, trying to set up the trophy presentation, but nobody was listening. The studio had descended into beautiful chaos. 20 million people had just watched a 12-year-old from Southside Chicago expose the head judge of the most prestigious math competition in America. Brenda Whitmore Kent walked off stage without a word, didn't wait for the official closing. Just left her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence her departure created. She never came back. And Jaden Hayes stood on that stage, tears streaming down his face, having just won $550,000 by proving the impossible. By proving that sometimes the greatest victory isn't finding the right answer. It quote. Recognizing when the question itself is wrong. The trophy presentation happened in chaos. Confetti cannons fired, music blared. Sarah Chen tried to conduct an official ceremony while half the audience was still processing what they'd witnessed. Jaden stood center stage, holding a trophy that felt too heavy and a check that felt unreal. $550,000. Sarah thrust a microphone toward him. "Jaden Hayes, you've just made MathQuest history. What do you want to say?" 20 million people waited. Jaden looked at the check. Looked at Grandma Max being helped by medical staff in the front row. Looked at Logan Sterling applauding genuinely. Looked at the empty seat where Brenda had been. He brought the microphone close. "Mathematics is the only fair thing in Southside. It doesn't look at the color of my skin. It doesn't look at my address or my bank account. It only looks at the truth." The studio went silent. Numbers don't lie, and tonight proved that people shouldn't either. The audience erupted. Real noise. People shouting, crying, cheering. Sarah had tears streaming down her face. Jaden left the stage holding that check like it was made of glass. The aftermath came fast. Brenda Whitmore Kent was fired before the broadcast ended. Morrison pulled her backstage, had a 30-second conversation, witnesses described as nuclear, and security escorted her out. She didn't fight, just left. But firing her wasn't enough. MathQuest launched an internal investigation. They reviewed 5 years of Brenda's problems, her scoring decisions, her judging patterns. The evidence was undeniable. Contestants from elite prep schools consistently scored higher under Brenda's judging, even when their solutions were mathematically equivalent to public school students. She deliberately used notation not taught in public curricula. The favoritism was so systematic, it couldn't be accidental. The news ran with it for weeks. Elite math competition rigged against poor students. Cambridge professors' bias exposed. Universities quietly removed Brenda from their websites. Cambridge launched its own investigation. Book deals evaporated. Speaking engagements canceled. Her career didn't just end. It was erased. 3 days after the finals, Jaden's phone rang. "Mr. Hayes, this is Dr. Marcus Aldridge from MathQuest." "Yes, sir." "Cambridge University has a special research program for exceptional young mathematicians. We'd like to offer you a full scholarship. Housing stipend, everything included, beginning whenever you're ready." Jaden sat in the hospital waiting room, phone pressed to his ear. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll consider it. You've proven yourself beyond mathematics. That courage is rare." Aldridge paused. "I also want to apologize. I should have questioned Brenda's problem sooner. I failed my responsibility as a judge." "You're apologizing to me?" "Yes, and I'm not the only one." The next call came from Patricia Chen, a medical debt lawyer. "I started a fund for your grandmother's medical bills, seeded it with $10,000, posted it online. As of this morning, we've raised over $1 million. Jaden couldn't speak. People saw your story. They wanted to help. The fund covers your grandmother's medical debt and establishes a scholarship in your name for other Southside students. $1 million on top of the $550,000 from MathQuest. Enough to save Grandma Max. Enough to change everything. The surgery was scheduled for the following week. Advanced chemotherapy combined with experimental treatment that Medicare didn't cover. The kind of care reserved for people with good insurance. Now accessible because 20 million people had watched a 12-year-old prove that courage mattered. Jaden sat in the surgical waiting room for 7 hours. The MathQuest check was deposited, but still felt unreal. His phone buzzed constantly with messages from reporters and strangers. He ignored everything, just waited. Dr. Lisa Morrison emerged at 4:17 p.m. She was smiling. The surgery went perfectly. We got everything. The experimental treatment is responding beautifully. She's in recovery now. Jaden's legs almost gave out. Your grandmother is going to be okay, Jaden. They let him see her an hour later. Grandma Max looked small in the hospital bed tubes and monitors everywhere, but her eyes were open, clear, focused on him. Baby, she whispered. Jaden pulled the chair close, took her hand carefully, pulled out his phone, showed her the check photo. I calculated it, Grandma. Your probability of survival is 100% now. The math works out. She laughed. It turned into a cough, but she was laughing. You and your numbers. Numbers don't lie. No, she agreed. They don't. And neither do you. 2 years later, Jaden Hayes, 14 years old, stood at the front of the Southside Community Center. The building was old paint peeling but packed. 200 kids filled every chair. More stood against walls, ages 8 to 18, all from the neighborhood, all hungry for something better. Jaden picked up chalk, wrote on the blackboard, X plus Y equal sign. Hope, mathematics doesn't care where you're from, he said, turning to face them. It doesn't care what you look like. It only cares if you're willing to learn. He pointed at the equation. X is where you are now. Y is the work you put in. Hope is what you get. That's not a metaphor. That's just math. A girl in the front row raised her hand, maybe 10 years old. But what if we're not smart like you? Jaden smiled. I'm not special. I just had problems that needed solving. My grandmother's life was on the line, so I learned. You all have problems too. Different problems, but just as important. And math can help solve them. He spent 2 hours teaching. Basic algebra. Foundations that would lead to calculus, number theory, everything else. He used examples from their lives. Budgeting. Probability. The mathematics of survival. Dr. Crawford sat in the back watching. She'd helped set up this program, use scholarship fund money to rent this space, buy supplies, make it real. Logan Sterling was there too. He donated computer equipment, showed up monthly to volunteer. He and Jaden had become unlikely friends, bonded by that night when mathematics transcended everything. Grandma Max sat in the third row, healthy and whole. Cancer gone. Bills paid. She'd returned to work because she wanted to, not because she had to, but she attended every single one of Jaden's classes. The session ended at 6. Kids filed out slowly, some staying to ask questions, some just wanting to be near someone who'd proven escape was possible. Jaden erased the board except for one equation, X plus Y equals sign hope, left it for next week. He walked outside into Chicago evening. The street looked the same. Same buildings, same sounds, same struggles. But something had changed. In storefronts, community centers, libraries across Southside, kids were learning math. Not because they had to for school, because they'd seen what was possible. Jaden pulled out his phone, took a picture of the community center, posted it, week 47, 200 students. The numbers keep growing. The photo went viral within hours. #math4all, #Jaden Hayes. But Jaden didn't see it. He'd already put his phone away. Was walking home with Grandma Max talking about normal things. Dinner. Homework. Her doctor's appointment showing hopefully clean scans again. Normal. Beautiful, normal dot. The camera pulls back. Away from Jaden and Grandma Max walking down the street. Away from the community center where 200 kids spent their afternoon learning that numbers could set them free. The view widens. Shows the whole neighborhood. Southside Chicago. Where poverty and violence and injustice tried to crush dreams before they formed dot. But in windows and doorways and street corners, kids held chalk, wrote equations, calculated possibilities, created hope from numbers and courage. Text appears on screen, mathematics doesn't lie, and neither does courage. Fade to black.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.